I stepped outside that morning, and every car in my driveway was gone. My Porsche, my wife's Audi, my daughter's Civic vanished like someone had wiped them off the map. The HOA had them towed, then sent a bill. They had no idea the towing company they paid to punish me belonged to me. If you'd asked me an hour earlier whether I thought a volunteer board could ruin my life, I'd have laughed. If you'd asked me after, I would have told you differently. My name is Mark Thompson. I live on Maple Lane in Cedar Ridge Estates, a place so manicured it feels like a movie set, trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, and an HOA president with a clipboard and an attitude. We keep 3 cars in our driveway because, well, life happens. Emily, my wife, works nights at the hospital and needs the Audi. My daughter Lily is a college student. And yes, I have a Porsche I like to clean when I'm avoiding spreadsheets. None of them block the sidewalk. None of them leak oil. None of them are abandoned. Just registered, insured, perfectly legal cars, parked where they've always been. So, when that bright orange notice showed up on my front door, excessive vehicles immediate action required, $500 fine. My first reaction was disbelief, then irritation, then the slow, familiar burn of being deliberately targeted. Karen Mitchell. Our HOA president lived 2 houses down. She had that perfect smile that never reached her eyes, a haircut that whispered control, and the kind of voice that could make you feel like arguing with her was the moral failing. She fast-tracked a bylaw, Amendment 14B limiting driveways to 2 vehicles, and she did it during an emergency meeting that no one remembers being told about. When I walked into the HOA office, she sat behind the desk like a judge preparing a sentence. Mr. Thompson, she said, reading glasses low, the community voted for this. If you wish to appeal, there's a $250 processing fee. Rules, she said. Rules. She explained escalation with surgical calm, 7 days to comply, fine doubles, and if unresolved, unauthorized vehicles will be removed at the owner's expense. She used the phrase, maintain neighborhood aesthetics, like it was a mantra. I stuffed the notice in my pocket and did what any stubborn person would. I parked my 3 cars in full view and went about my day. I figured I'd handle it in the open. Confrontation wasn't my style, but neither was blind folding myself to petty tyranny. The next morning my driveway was empty. I felt it like a punch. My stomach dropped. My heart did that weird little skip that tells you something's wrong. Then my phone rang. It was Eric, one of my dispatchers. Boss, we towed a Porsche, an Audi, and a Civic from Maple Lane. Same address as yours. For a second, the world did a weird flip. The HOA had hired a towing company to take our cars, and the towing company was mine. I laughed, this high, ridiculous laugh that was part anger, part disbelief. Karen had thought she'd humiliated me. She'd actually handed me a loaded gun. I could have called her out right then. I could have stormed the office and demanded apologies and refunds, but I didn't. I sat and watched. I had options: pay the fines and move the cars, sue, or make the ridiculousness work for me. I chose to lean into the absurd. Every time the HOA called for a tow, Eric and the team followed the order for a fee, of course. The cars were brought to my impound lot, logged in and held. I told Eric to hold the processing. I signed the release forms myself and drove the cars home. I washed the Porsche on my lawn for all to see and left a note on the windshield. Nice try. See you tomorrow. I wanted Karen to feel like she'd won a small battle before sinking into the illusion of victory. She didn't get to enjoy it long. The loop repeated: morning, empty driveway. Evening, my cars back where they belonged. The HOA paid each time the money going into accounts that by coincidence ended up benefiting my business. From the outside, it looked like I was panicking. From the inside, I felt a grin creeping up that I refused to let show too much. People started noticing. Neighbors exchanged looks. Karen watched me like a hawk from her kitchen window, clutching that clipboard as if she could will the problem away. Then she escalated. Notices piled up, fines ballooned to $3,000 with threats of liens. The tone shifted from bureaucratic to vindictive. There's a particular kind of dread that sneaks in than the one that makes you wonder if you misread things, if maybe you're the problem. I remember sitting alone on the kitchen counter late one night, the envelopes stacked like a sad tower, Emily asleep at her laptop, and thinking maybe I did push too far. Maybe I should just pay and move the cars into the garage, though that was impossible, the garage packed with medical supplies and tools. I felt small, and that's the dangerous bit. Power makes bullies cruel, but doubt makes you give up. I almost did. For a heartbeat, I imagined cutting my losses, moving the Porsche, and avoiding the meeting, letting the fines stand like a bruise you stop looking at. Emily put her hand over mine and said, "You don't have to do this, Mark." That phrase was a lifeline and a challenge. I thought about Lily's car, about the principle, about the idea that a single person shouldn't be able to weaponize a community for his own pet grievances. So I stood up, put the envelopes in a drawer, and went to their emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed with people who'd been silently stewing. Karen began with a slideshow, my driveway circled in red like evidence in a crime show. She paced, she declaimed about standards and responsibility. The air smelled like tension and cheap coffee. When she looked at me and proclaimed this blatant defiance, cannot stand, something in the room shifted. I slid a single piece of paper across the table, a stack of invoices signed and stamped linking every single toe to the HOA's requests and payments. Her face went from smug to a color I can't name fast enough. "Funny thing," I said. "Every time you towed my cars, you paid me to do it." The silence hit like a physical thing. Heads turned. Board members shifted. I could see it in Karen's eyes, that small panic that happens when the stage you built becomes a trap. The meeting dissolved into questions, accusations, murmurs. My role changed in that instant, victim to accuser, reactive to proactive. Humiliation makes people reckless, and a reckless Karen is a dangerous one. A few nights later, my security system's night vision caught someone creeping into the driveway at 2:37 a.m. No mask, dark clothes, and a hand moving with a kind of furious intent. The footage is grainy but unmistakable. She keyed my Porsche's door with some metal and then smashed the passenger window with a brick like she was punctuating a sentence with violence. She looked straight at the cameras afterward like she wanted a signature on the crime. I saved that footage in triplicate. I sent copies to my lawyer, to the local police, and yes, to a reporter who covers local community drama like it's soap opera. The cops came, watched the tape, and didn't look surprised. They looked relieved this one was open and shut. When they knocked on Karen's door, she stammered the first excuses of a guilty person set-up frame job, and then it all fell apart in front of the camera. The news crew was rolling. Neighbors gathered. Someone in the crowd laughed. Someone cried. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was the weirdest kind of punctuation, small, loud, precise. But that wasn't the endgame. It was only the key that unlocked the other doors. With Karen arrested, I pushed for an audit. HOA books turned into an ugly treasure map. Fake invoices, inflated vendor contracts, redirected fines, tens of thousands of dollars siphoned into personal accounts. Names of board members who'd nodded and signed without reading. A pattern of abuse that made the initial towing look amateurish. I compiled the evidence, sent it to every homeowner and to the state HOA Oversight Board. The fallout was immediate. At the next meeting, the board was voted out in a chorus of enough. State investigators opened files. Lawyers sent letters. Charges were filed. Karen tried to play the victim in court, blaming clerical errors and misunderstanding, but the prosecution had footage of her committing vandalism and a ledger trail that led right to her accounts. Judges aren't fond of people who steal from neighbors and then smash the property they took to hide the theft. Restitution was ordered, houses were mortgaged, reputations were ruined. I never did a victory lap. There was no parade. I parked my Porsche back where it had always been, sat on the porch, and watched Maple Lane, the street that had been my battleground, settle into a kind of brittle quiet. Karen left town with a U-Haul in the night, no farewell, just the slip of a life undone. The HOA, as it existed, dissolved, and homeowners got audits, refunds, and, more importantly, the knowledge that community power can be abused, and that abuse, if exposed, will topple. You can't let small tyrants govern big things. Stand up, document everything, and don't assume silence is safety.